Hello everyone, and welcome back to another installment of My Little Pony Pokémon Teams. Before we get into the 6 characters I have selected for today's episode, I just want to catch everyone up on some small life updates since my last upload. I've been super busy over the last few months finishing my second year at university, and now that Halloween is over, I have plenty of time between now and Christmas for our regularly scheduled content. As for this video, before we get into the rules, please remember that these are entirely my opinion and the feedback from my friends. And if you're not entirely in agreement with my selection, that's your opinion. This is just for fun, and I hope you enjoy this series. If you want to see a part 3, please leave suggestions for more groups of My Little Pony characters, and I'll develop some more teams in the future. With that disclaimer out of the way, let's go over the rules. Each character will have a standard team of 6 Pokémon and contain at least one starter Pokémon or an evolved form of one. They also do not have to be a traditional starter, so characters like Eevee can be included. Only the princesses can have legendary Pokémon, and each character will have a Pokémon related to their cutie mark, their pet if applicable, and general traits, aesthetics, habits, and skills that character may exhibit. And with that, let me introduce you to our characters and their teams. First introduced in the My Little Pony Equestria Girls movie, the primary antagonist Sunset Shimmer is first on our roster for this episode. Given her general aesthetic in her human form, it was fairly easy for me to assign her the fire and dark types for her team. Beginning with her starter Pokémon, we have Fennekin, the fox Pokémon. The starter felt most fitting from my view for a variety of reasons: symbolism, references to the Pokémon anime, and references to Sunset's redemption in the Rainbow Rocks movie. First and foremost, it's well known that foxes are a common symbol across a variety of religions and cultures for representing deceit, trickery, and misfortune. And pre-redemption, Sunset is exactly that, a liar. The entire plot of Equestria Girls movie is entirely based on her deceitful actions towards Princess Celestia, or Principal Celestia, and the origin of the crown. Rather than admit that it's not rightfully hers, she attempts to keep it for herself and acts to sabotage Twilight and her friends in the running for the title of Princess of the Fall Formal. The second reason is a reference to the Pokémon anime and is tied to the third reason for its selection, Sunset's redemption. In the final battle of the Rainbooms versus the Dazzlings, Sunset is the last one to stand up to the banished sirens attempting to harness equestrian magic in the human realm. She takes the mic that rolls at her feet and with the power of friendship blasts the Dazzlings and shatters their amulets. She is a true performer and worked to better herself and overcome social struggles. And who do we see doing this in the Pokémon anime? Serena. In the XY season of the show, my favourite by the way, she runs for the title of Kalos Queen with plenty of other performers, with a Fennekin. Overall, a solid starter for Sunset's team. Pairing with Fennekin is the dancing Pokémon Bailey Style Oricorio. You could say that Sunset doesn't technically dance during the Rainbow Rocks performance, but Oricorio has another reason for being on its team, their typing. Bailey Style Oricorio is a fire flying type Pokémon that looks like a red and black bird. And what mythical bird is known for its fire? A phoenix. You may ask, why not add Moltres to her team instead? Let me remind you of Rule 3, only princesses can have legendary Pokémon. As such, I believe Sunset did deserve to be an Alicorn, but canonically she isn't one. So unfortunately, no legendary bird for her, and no legendaries in this video. Next, we have another fire-based bird on the team. Yeah, I know 2 Pokémon with the phoenix thing. Listen, this one was chosen for its Pokédex entry. In X and Y episode 36, Ash's Pokédex states, during intense battles, its wings give off showers of embers as it flies. We see Sunset do this to herself in the third Equestria Girls movie. In Friendship Games, she defeats Saitwai's magically corrupted counterpart, Midnight Sparkle, as she once again uses the power of friendship to defeat her, transforming into Daydream Shimmer, an angelic character with wings of light. I think that this reason is enough to add Talonflame to the team. The next 2 Pokemon I think are more oddball picks that I chose more for the vibes rather than Pokédex entries or references to any canon material. First is Houndoom, the dark Pokemon. That quite literally is its classification, by the way, and it's a dark/fire type. Overall, it's a highly intimidating Pokemon, much like Sunset in her first appearance. And the second is purely a cosmetic choice, the Sun Pattern Vivian. Its sun form is just perfect, and the color palettes are just the best pairing. The final member of Sunset's team was the first and easiest pick, Rapidash. I don't think I need to explain this one, so we'll just move on to the next trainer. Another reformed villain, Starlight Glimmer, is next to have a team. This one was a lot harder to choose for, but I will explain each of my choices. First and most obvious is Galarian Rapidash. As both Starlight and Sunset are reformed villains, I felt this was an appropriate pairing to connect the two, as well as the colour palette of Starlight's pony form matching that of the unique horn Pokémon. From there, things get a little bit harder to explain beyond colour and aesthetics. Second, we have Goodra. This lovable giant seems like the perfect choice based on the primary purple colouring, but after considering its design and typing, I felt it matched with Starlight's backstory. For those unfamiliar, she grew up alongside Sunburst, a unicorn who unintentionally beat her to get a cutie mark. He left the town not long after, and she believed that he'd abandoned her and ended up trying to take over an entire town and stealing their cutie marks. However, she is eventually redeemed and no longer becomes the subject of misunderstanding. Because of this, I feel Goodra would be a good choice, as people can easily misunderstand how it's a dragon type. I mean, it doesn't exactly look like a typical dragon. Next, we have Sylveon. This one doesn't exactly match the purple theme, but I believe that its addition to the team would be yet another reference to the X and Y anime. As Serena's Eevee evolves with the encouragement after losing a fight, Starlight finds herself redeemed after learning to move beyond her previous selfish behaviour. This next Pokemon was chosen purely for its namesake, Starmie, and it's purple, so I don't think I'll explain this one any further. That does lead us to our next Pokemon quite nicely. For her starter, I chose Quaxly. I didn't really have a specific theme based on typing for this one, and this is the second water type in her team. I do think it felt better matching with the colours of some of the other team members, and also fits with Starlight's character position as the ugly duckling, someone outcast and unpopular who ends up becoming better over time. The final member of Starlight's team is Tinkertuff. Now, this one does fit with the pink, blue, and purple theming so far, but to fully explain my choice is the Scarlet and Violet Pokédex. Tinkertuff is known for attacking groups of other Pokémon, much like Starlight taking over the village with the intention of equality, although misguided. Overall, I think this is a rather aesthetically pleasing team, much like that of our next trainer. Once again, we have another reformed villain of the show to give a full team. This time, it was none other than the great and powerful Trixie. Now, as someone who is studying character design, I'm usually all about the colours, styles, and aesthetics of the characters. The uniqueness of individuals and their complex personalities makes this show appealing to those outside its target audience. But the reason I love Trixie is for her voice. Even under a false pretense of confidence, she can manage to learn from her mistakes for better and still be a confident character deserving of her self-made title as the Great and Powerful.
Come one, come all, come and witness the amazing magic of the Great and Powerful Trixie!
To make her team just as great and powerful as she is, I will begin with Trixie's starter, Quaxly. I know it's the same as Starlight, but I will justify my choice. I was thinking along the lines of its final evolution, Quaquaval. I mean, look at this thing. It is perfect for Trixie's energy and would do well on stage during her shows. Next up is Illumise. I felt this one matched with Trixie's outfit during the song Tricks Up My Sleeve, and it kind of matches the whole magician vibe from her earlier appearances in the main show. Another perfect pick for her magical Pokemon team is Shiny Ditto. This pick was more for the aesthetic, but it does feel applicable with some lore from both franchises. Ditto's whole thing is being able to shift into another Pokemon to try and appear more powerful. Trixie's ordeal against Twilight during her antagonist era showed her trying to be more powerful by appearing to have the powers of an Alicorn via the Alicorn amulet. Therefore, Ditto seems like a fitting addition to her team. The next two Pokemon were some more oddball choices, but I promise the final Pokemon after that will be worth it. Mostly picked to match the sort of snowy vibes from Trixie's colour palette, I picked Glaceon and Vivillon in its tundra pattern. I don't have much to say about these two besides the visual liking, and honestly, I don't really have much to say otherwise. Last but not least, the final Pokemon of Trixie's team is Aurorus. I find this Pokemon's design just absolutely gorgeous and matches well with Trixie's performance outfit in pony or human form. Taking from the Pokemon Shield Dex entry, it states that when this Pokemon howls, auroras appear in the night sky. Pairing that with her last name Lulamoon, it feels very fitting as her ace Pokemon on Trixie's team. The second half of this video is not simply a selection of unicorn antagonists, but a well-known canon group of fillies, the Cutie Mark Crusaders. Something I wanted to do with these three was to give them something not quite matching as Pokemon on their teams, to represent their matching yet individual cutie marks. For this, we will begin with Apple Bloom's first Pokemon, Jolteon. I felt this one matched best out of the OG evolutions because the others matched better with Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo, which you will see later. And on the spectrum of dog, cat, and fox things that the evolutions look like, I'd say Jolteon is probably rather dog-like and can also represent Winona in a way. Second on her team, and to represent her cutie mark, is Applin. I don't think I will explain this one, so we'll move on. However, I did want to represent the Apple family as a whole, or at least the group that Apple Bloom lives with. For this, I picked Mousehold. I also wanted to include more of the later generation Pokemon when I was picking her team, so I think this one fits pretty well. Next is Apple Bloom's starter, the first Pokemon I believe she would actually receive from her family, a Rowlet. I wanted her team to have at least half being grass type, as well as a different starter type for each of the Crusaders. Speaking of grass types, the final grass type on her team is Bellossom. I picked it for the similar wording of Bloom and Blossom, as well as its Pokemon Violet Dex entry. After it grows up, it leaves the forest it was born in to form groups with other Bellossom. It breaks into dance when it gets excited. This reminds me of the performance from the school talent show episode, as well as the fact that she forms her own group with Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo. The final Pokemon on her team I did consider to give Sweetie Belle instead, but decided it fit better after understanding this Pokemon's creation. With that, the last Pokemon on her team is Mimikyu. I chose this one based on the episode that Apple Bloom attempts to make the trip across Equestria instead of Applejack, and how she generally wants to be as good as her. Mimikyu was created kind of as a joke after each generation has a Pika clone that never made the same impact on the franchise, but everyone adores this silly little bootleg Pikachu. Overall, I think this team fits very well, and we can move on to the next Crusader. This next team belongs to the unicorn of the trio, Sweetie Belle. Starting off, I wanted to use an OG evolution, but to adhere to a pink and blue color palette, I chose Shiny Vaporeon. It's very vibrant and possibly a bit overbearing, but I felt it matched better with her than Jolteon or Flareon, or using regular Vaporeon. From there, I decided she would have a water starter as well. As such, I chose Poplio. This one also fits very much with her fun nature, and its final stage Primarina also matches her general aesthetic very well. This next one continues to be yet another aesthetic choice, but I like it anyway. Alolan Vulpix seems to be the perfect fit. I was originally going to go with Alolan Ninetales instead, but I felt the smaller pre-evolution form fit Sweetie Belle a lot better since she is also the younger sister to Rarity. These next two Pokemon tie in Sweetie Belle's love of sewing, which she takes after her sister. First is Sewaddle, the sewing Pokemon. I did consider using the shiny for this one, but I think the regular is nicer. Another reason for this pick is its Scarlet Dex entry. Sewaddle chews on leaves to make its clothing, trying to mimic the leafy garment Levani first dressed it in. Much like how Sweetie Belle tries to mimic Rarity's skills in the fashion industry. Following that, I chose Stuffle, as it reminds me of a teddy bear and matched well with the idea of a pink shiny Vaporeon. Last on Sweetie Belle's team is Nidorina. I wanted another blue Pokemon since Swaddle isn't blue in the regular or shiny form, and I also wanted something that paired with Sweetie Belle's struggle with magic. Funnily enough, quite a few Dex entries about Nidorina describe its horns developing slowly to not hurt others. We see Sweetie Belle struggle a lot early on with magic, so I think this fit is kind of, perfect. Speaking of finals, we have reached the final team of this video and the last member of the Cutie Mark Crusaders, Scootaloo. I think she was my favourite of these three as a kid, but after rewatching the entire show as an adult, I think I prefer her pony form over her human form. Back on the Pokemon, the first and most obvious pick was Cyclizar. I don't think I need to explain this one, so we'll move on to her evolution. I wanted to make her team a group of fire and dark types, so I gave her Flareon. I did briefly consider Jolteon as an option before I settled on the typing, so I think this one does fit the team better. Next up, two more dog-like fire Pokemon, Growlithe and Houndour. I don't know what it is that made me give her 3 dog-like fire types, but this trio does go really well together. It goes well with her tomboy characterization and chaotic personality. Second to last, I picked a second stage starter for her team. This isn't her OG starter, but rather something she hopes to evolve further, Charmeleon. I initially wanted to give her a Charizard similar to giving Sweetie Belle the Alolan and Vulpix, but I couldn't think of an equivalent Pokemon that suited Applebloom and her team, so I discarded the idea. Last but not least, her actual starter Pokemon, Scorbunny. Although she may not like Angel Bunny in canon, I like the idea of her being a more physical-based fighter rather than relying on fire-based attacks, similar to how she finds a way to be something beyond a Pegasus and relying on flying to fit in. And that is it. I hope you all enjoyed part 2 of my pony Pokemon teams, and if you have any suggestions on who to feature in a part 3, please drop your suggestions down below. As always, these videos are my subjective opinion, and you're welcome to suggest your own teams in the comments. That's it for now. I hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you all next time.